Owen Atwood wasn't the type to jump to conclusions, not usually. He had spent a decade married to Amanda, trusting her without a second thought. Their bond felt unshakable, built on years of shared secrets, late-night talks, and a mortgage that tied them together as much as their vows did. If you'd asked him a year ago, he would have sworn on his life that nothing could come between them. But lately, something felt wrong. There wasn't one big, flashing warning sign, just a slow, steady drip of little things that didn't add up, like ashes accumulating in an ashtray. Too small to cause alarm at first, but piling up until they couldn't be ignored. It started subtly. Amanda's phone, once an afterthought, was suddenly glued to her hand. She scrolled endlessly, her fingers flying over the screen while little smirks flickered across her lips, smirks that disappeared the second Owen walked in. She'd shift the phone away, angling the screen out of sight like she was shielding classified information. Just work, she'd mutter if he asked, her tone sharp, almost daring him to question her further. He didn't. Not yet. Then there was the sudden transformation in her appearance. Amanda had always been stylish, Owen loved that about her, but now it was different. Her new outfits clung to her like they'd been tailored for someone else's admiration, someone else's gaze. She'd started wearing perfume, the same one she had worn on their honeymoon, the one he hadn't smelled on her in years. But now it lingered in the air every night before she left the house. And the lingerie? That was the biggest giveaway. Delicate lace, soft silk, expensive pieces that never made an appearance in their bedroom. For me, she'd say with a dismissive chuckle whenever he noticed, as if she were treating herself. Sure, Amanda. For you. Then came the late nights. The woman who used to text him updates, leaving now, be home by 6, was now rolling in well past midnight. Work emergency, she'd say over her shoulder, barely stopping on her way to the bedroom. Or, girls' night. Lost track of time. But Owen knew her friends. And funny enough, none of them had mentioned a girls' night when he casually brought it up in conversation. When he asked Amanda directly, she turned on him like a cornered animal. What, you're my babysitter now, she snapped. He let it go. Owen wasn't one to pick fights. Not yet. But the intimacy, or the complete lack of it, was what finally drove the knife in. It had been months since she had looked at him with even the faintest trace of desire. Every night, he reached for her, only for her to stiffen, rolling away like his touch burned. Tired, she mumbled. Long day. What night? When he brushed his fingers along her arm, she flinched. Flinched. Like his touch was something to endure, not welcome. That was the moment it hit him. This wasn't stress. It wasn't exhaustion. It was something else. Or someone else. One evening, the tension between them reached its breaking point. They sat at the dinner table, Owen absently twirling his fork through a plate of cold spaghetti while Amanda sat across from him, barely touching her food. Her focus was locked on her phone, fingers tapping, deleting, tapping again, like she was defusing a bomb. The screen's glow lit up her face, and for just a second, he saw it. A smile. Not the forced, polite one she gave him these days. A real smile, soft and warm, the kind she used to give him. Then she looked up and saw him watching. Her expression froze. The phone clattered onto the table, and she let out a slow breath like she'd just been caught in the middle of a crime. Hey, babe, she said, her voice thick with fake sweetness. I was thinking, I want to grab dinner with a work friend tomorrow. Cool with you? Owen's fork paused mid-twirl. A work friend, he echoed, his voice steady, unreadable. Who? She waved a hand like it was nothing. Oh, just Rick. You know, from the office. No big deal. Rick. The name hit him like a brick through a windshield. Owen had heard Rick's name before. Some project partner Amanda had mentioned offhandedly, never making him seem important. Back then, Owen hadn't given it a second thought. But now? The way she tossed the name out, too casual, too quick, it sent a fire through his gut. Dinner. Owen leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest. Just the two of you? Amanda's eyes flickered, a momentary hesitation before she doubled down. Yeah, just dinner. God, Owen, it's food, not a marriage proposal. Why do you have to turn everything into a problem? He smirked, the bitterness creeping in despite himself. Oh, I don't know, Amanda. Maybe because my wife is suddenly dressing like she's about to hand out roses on The Bachelor, staying out late, and now planning cozy dinners with Rick? Forgive me for putting two and two together. Her face hardened. You're unbelievable. It's just a meal. Do you trust me or not? There it was, the trap. A question designed to corner him. Say no, and he was the jealous, overbearing husband. Say yes, and he was signing off on whatever twisted game she was playing. Owen's fingers tightened around his fork, the metal pressing into his palm. I trust you, he said slowly, locking eyes with her. I'm just not sold on Rick. She scoffed, pushing her chair back so hard it scraped against the floor. You're pathetic. I don't need your permission to eat with a friend. And just like that, she stormed off, leaving Owen alone with a cold plate of spaghetti and a realization that settled deep in his bones. This wasn't about trust. This was war. Amanda didn't let Owen's suspicion slow her down. If anything, it fueled her. The next few days were a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. She sighed dramatically every time he walked into her room, rolling her eyes so hard they could have powered a wind turbine. Oh great, the fun police have arrived, she muttered under her breath, always loud enough for him to hear. Owen didn't react, not on the surface. But inside? He was a pressure cooker with the lid rattling, and sooner or later, it was going to blow. One morning, as she sipped her coffee, she casually lobbed a grenade. Never thought I'd marry someone so fragile. She took another slow sip. I steady. Must be exhausting, always imagining I'm sneaking around. Owen just stared at her, stirring his cereal with a spoon he wished he could bend in half. Fragile? She had no idea. He wasn't fragile. He was furious. And she was about to learn the difference. The silent treatment wasn't enough for her anymore. She switched tactics, turning the screws with calculated precision. Do you even respect me? She demanded one night, arms crossed, fake hurt dripping from her voice. Or am I just some trophy you like keeping on a shelf? Owen almost laughed. Respect? She was treating their marriage like a doormat, stomping all over it with zero regard, and he was the one lacking respect. The gall was almost impressive. Then she went for the kill shot. They were in the kitchen, Owen rinsing dishes while she scrolled her phone, probably exchanging texts with Rick, if he had to guess. She didn't look up when she spoke, her tone laced with something venomous. You know, real men don't cling to their wives like scared little boys. Maybe you should work on that. The sponge slipped from Owen's grip, hitting the sink with a wet slap. He turned slowly, drying his hands on a dish towel. Real men, huh? His voice was low, almost a growl. Funny you'd mention that, Amanda, because I'm starting to wonder what kind of man you're comparing me to. For a split second, her mask cracked. Her eyes widened, just a flicker of something guilty, before she scoffed and rolled her shoulders back. Oh, please, don't turn this into some soap opera. She pushed away from the counter. I'm going to bed. She sauntered off, leaving Owen standing in the kitchen, staring at the empty doorway, his fist flexing at his sides. That was it. She'd pushed too far. He was done playing the clueless husband. The next evening, Amanda made her move. She walked in from work, dressed to kill, heels clicking against the floor, hair falling in perfect waves, her dress hugging every curve like she was stepping onto a red carpet. And then, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, she dropped the bomb. Hey, babe, I'm meeting Rick for dinner tomorrow. She tilted her head, feigning innocence. Thought I'd give you a heads up, since you're so sensitive about it. Owen, in the middle of loosening his tie, froze. A heads up? How generous. His voice came out flat, simmering beneath the surface. A heads up? How thoughtful. Should I bake you a cake to celebrate? She smirked, tossing her purse onto the counter. Don't be dramatic. It's just dinner. You gonna lock me in the house or something? Owen stepped closer, his height looming over her, his stare unyielding. Nah, Amanda, I'm not the jailer type. But let's cut the bullshit. Why's it gotta be Rick? His tone was calm, steady. What's so special about this guy that you're willing to torch our marriage over a damn steak? Her mask slipped for half a second before she covered it with annoyance. You're ridiculous. It's not about him. It's about me having a life outside of you. She folded her arms. Or is that too threatening for your fragile ego? Owen laughed. A short, humorless sound. My ego's fine. Thanks. He tilted his head. It's my wife sneaking off with some sleazy coworker that's the problem. Call it what it is. Amanda, a date. You're not fooling anyone. Her nostrils flared as she stepped closer, voice rising. You don't get to tell me what I can do. I'm not your prisoner. She jabbed a finger at his chest. It's dinner, Owen. Deal with it or don't. I don't care. With that, she spun on her heel and stomped toward the bedroom, slamming the door so hard the walls trembled. For a moment, Owen stood there, his pulse pounding. Then, something in him shifted. Not rage. Not yet. Clarity. She wasn't asking permission. She was daring him to stop her. And that's when he made his decision. If she wanted a fight, she'd get one. But not on her terms. On his. The next day, Amanda got ready like she was attending the Met Gala. An hour in front of the mirror, curling her hair, slipping into a dress that screamed, "Look at me," spritzing herself with the perfume she used to wear just for him. Owen sat on the couch, sipping his beer, watching her like a man playing a long game. She twirled in front of the mirror, caught his eye, and smirked. "See you later, babe." She practically skipped out the door. "Enjoy yourself," Owen called after her, his tone dry as sandpaper. She thought she'd won. She was wrong. If Amanda thought she could play him for a fool, she was about to learn the hard way. He wasn't some clueless husband she could gaslight into submission. She wanted a game? Fine. He was done playing defense. Owen wasn't about to walk into this fight empty-handed. He went deeper. Bank statements, screenshots of texts, timestamps of every work emergency she'd lied about. He snapped pictures of the messages before she had the chance to erase them, every digital breadcrumb leading to her infidelity. But that wasn't enough. He wanted proof, undeniable, inarguable, airtight. So he made a call. "Follow her," he said, his voice cold, steady as steel. "I want dates, places, pictures, everything." The private investigator didn't ask questions. Money talked, and Owen was more than willing to pay for the truth. Step 3. Let her dig her own grave. Amanda came home at 1 a.m., heels in hand, reeking of expensive cologne, not his. She barely glanced at him as she passed, tossing out a breezy night, like she hadn't just spent the evening wrapped up in another man. Then, just like that, she disappeared into the bedroom. Owen watched her go, his jaw clenched, his fingers flexing at his sides. She thought she was untouchable. She thought he was still in the dark. "Keep smiling, Amanda. It's about to get real bright." The chess match begins. The next week played out like a slow, smoldering war. Amanda ramped up her act, dressing to the nines every time she left the house. She hummed to herself, twirling her hair, floating around with a glow she hadn't worn in years. Meanwhile, Owen played his part. Quiet, distant, letting her think she had won. She didn't notice the PI tracking her every move. She didn't see the file thickening with every passing day. And then, she slipped. The moment that broke it all. Owen turned on the shower, letting the water run at full pressure, ensuring the steady stream echoed through the walls. It was a simple trick, one that would make Amanda think he was occupied, safely tucked away in the bathroom, oblivious to anything happening beyond that door. But he wasn't. Instead of stepping under the warm spray, he moved carefully, deliberately, keeping his steps light against the tiles. He reached for the door handle, turning it with slow precision, inch by inch, until the latch released with barely a sound. The hallway beyond was dim, the only light coming from the faint glow of Amanda's phone screen. She stood just outside the bedroom, her back to him, her posture tense but eager, as if she were hanging on to every word being spoken on the other end. Then he heard it. Her voice, low, hushed, dripping with a softness she hadn't used with him in months. "I can't wait to be with you," she purred. "For real." A pause. Then, even softer, "Soon, baby. Soon." Owen's blood turned to ice. Then fire. She wasn't just screwing around. She was planning her exit, plotting a future where he was nothing more than a discarded relic of her past. His knuckles turned white against the counter as he forced himself to stay still, to breathe. He wanted to rip that phone from her hand, to end this charade. But not yet. Timing was everything. And then, that night, she pushed her luck too far. Amanda strutted into the living room, draped in confidence and crimson lipstick, and dropped the bomb like she was ordering takeout. "Owen, I think we should separate," she said, her arms crossed, leaning against the wall like she had all the power in the world. "No point dragging this out, right? We've grown apart." Owen looked up from the couch, his expression unreadable. "Separate," he echoed, letting the words settle in the air. "That's what you want." She shrugged, inspecting her nails like this was a casual conversation about the weather. "Yeah, I mean, I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore." Owen almost laughed at the cliché. "Not in love with me," he repeated, a dark chuckle slipping out. "Wow, Amanda, did you rehearse that in front of the mirror? Or did Rick write it for you?" Her head snapped up. "Don't start. I'm trying to keep this civil." "Civil?" His patience snapped. He stood, towering over her, his voice razor-sharp. "Civil? You're sharing personal moments some guy behind my back, spending my money on him, and now you want to waltz out of here with a handshake and a smile? That's not civil, sweetheart. That's a damn joke." She flinched. But then she recovered, stepping closer with a sneer. You're delusional. I'm not sharing personal moments anyone. Her voice dropped, mocking. And even if I was, maybe it's because you're so damn suffocating. Ever think of that? Owen laughed. A rough, humorless sound. Suffocating? Oh, that's rich. He leaned in, his voice dropping low. Tell me, Amanda, does Rick feel suffocated when you're sneaking off to hotels with him? Or is that just the kind of freedom you need to find yourself? Her face went ghostly white, then red. For the first time, Owen saw it. Panic. She opened her mouth to fire back, but he didn't let her. He stepped closer, his voice a quiet threat. Don't bother lying. I know, and you're gonna wish I didn't. She froze, her bravado cracking. What the hell are you talking about? Owen smiled. Cold. Calculated. You'll see. And with that, he turned, walking away, leaving her standing there, the air thick with everything she thought she'd gotten away with. She had pushed him to the edge. And now? Now he was done waiting. She wanted out. The next morning, while Amanda was still asleep, Owen logged into their joint bank accounts, his fingers moving with purpose over the keyboard. He scanned the transactions, and the reality hit like a gut punch. Hotel stays, designer boutiques, dinners at upscale restaurants, places she had never once suggested they go together. She wasn't just cheating. She was funding her affair with his money. Classy, he muttered, a bitter smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. Within an hour, he rerouted his paycheck to a brand new account, his alone. Untouchable. Then, with a few more clicks, he froze their shared credit cards. Let her try picking up Rick's tab now. He pictured the moment, the way her smug little smile would disappear when the card got declined, mid-laugh, while Rick watched her squirm. Amanda strutted into the kitchen, still drunk on her own delusions of victory. She grabbed her phone, probably eager to text Rick about how smoothly she'd played Owen. Owen leaned against the doorway, sipping his coffee, waiting for the show to begin. It didn't take long. Her smug grin vanished as she stared at the screen, confusion creasing her forehead. What the? Her fingers tapped furiously, faster, more frantic, as if she could will the numbers back onto the screen. Then, like a switch flipping, she spun toward him, voice shrill, eyes wild. Owen, where's the money? He raised an eyebrow, the picture of calm amusement. What money? Our money, she snapped, waving the phone in the air like a weapon. The account is damn near empty. What did you do? Owen took his time setting his mug down, stretching out the silence just to watch her squirm. Then, with a slow, deliberate smile, he said, Oh, that? Yeah. See, our money isn't really ours anymore. It's mine now. Her jaw dropped. You can't do that, she screeched, stepping forward, fury twisting her face. That's theft. I'll call the cops. Owen chuckled, shaking his head. Go ahead. Tell them how you've been blowing through my paycheck on your boyfriend. See how that plays out. His tone was steady, effortless. I've got receipts, Amanda. Literal ones. You're not the only one who can play dirty. Amanda froze, her chest heaving, realization dawning far too late. She had underestimated him. Badly. You're a bastard, she spat, voice trembling with rage. Owen didn't even flinch. And you're a liar. His voice was calm, almost lazy, but razor sharp. Game's over, sweetheart. You lose. Amanda didn't take her financial defeat quietly. She stormed out of the kitchen, hurling every insult she could scrape from the bottom of her rotten little heart. You'll regret this, Owen, she shrieked. Owen didn't move, didn't blink, just leaned back against the counter, took another slow sip of coffee, and let the ghost of a smirk cross his lips. Regret? Not a damn chance. He was just getting started. By noon, the next day the envelope arrived. Thick, heavy, sitting on the dining table like a guillotine blade, waiting for her neck. Owen had planned this down to the second. His PI had done his job. The evidence was airtight. And his lawyer friend? He had turned it into a masterpiece. When Amanda finally came slinking back that evening, she barely made it 2 steps inside before she froze. The envelope sat there, waiting. Her name was scrawled across the front in Owen's sharp, deliberate handwriting. No flourishes. No nonsense. Just Amanda, a death sentence wrapped in manila. What's this? She snapped, her voice sharp, forced. She snatched it up, tearing it open with the same arrogance she had walked in with. Then, she saw the first page. Divorce papers. The color drained from her face. Her eyes flicked to Owen, still lounging on the couch, calm as ever. then back to the documents in her hands. She flipped through, faster now, her fingers shaking. Her breath hitched as attachments spilled out like a crime scene laid bare. Screenshots of her texts with Rick. Timestamp call logs. Bank statements, circled in red. Every dollar she had stolen from their life to fund her affair. Hotel receipts. And then, the kill shot. A grainy black and white photo of her and Rick, tangled up outside some dive bar. Her lips on his neck, his hands on her waist. Courtesy of the PI. Amanda's voice was barely above a whisper, her hands trembling as the divorce papers slipped from her grip and scattered onto the floor. She stood there, frozen, her whole world unraveling before her eyes. You spied on me? Owen stood up, slow and measured, crossing the room until he was just close enough to see the pure panic swimming in her gaze. Spying's such an ugly word, he murmured, voice laced with mockery. I prefer investigating. He smirked. You know, since you were too busy with Rick to notice me connecting the dots. She staggered back, gripping the edge of the table for support. Her confidence, so bright, so smug just days ago, was slipping fast. This is illegal, she sputtered, grasping for control. You can't use this. I'll fight it. Owen laughed. Cold. Dangerous. Fight it. With what, Amanda? He cocked his head, his smirk deepening. Your charm? Your empty bank account. He leaned in slightly, dropping his voice to a lethal whisper. Face it. And not just by Rick this time. Her face twisted in a mix of rage and desperation. You think you're so smart, huh? She hissed. You think this makes you the big man? I'll take half. Everything. You don't get to win. Owen's expression didn't waver. Half of what? I've got proof you drained our money for your affair. Courts love that. You'll be lucky to walk away with your dignity, assuming you have any left. Something in her snapped. She lunged, nails out, but Owen sidestepped easily, letting her stumble into the chair. You're pathetic, she screamed, tears streaking through her once perfect mascara. I should have left you years ago. Owen shrugged, completely unfazed. Should have. He let the words sink in. Would have saved us both the trouble. But you didn't. And now. He gestured toward the divorce papers still lying at her feet. Now, you get exactly what you wanted. Freedom. She froze, her chest heaving. And for the first time, Owen saw it. Real, gut-deep fear. She had bet everything on Rick. Her marriage, her stability, her entire future. And now, the cracks were showing. He'll stand by me, she stammered. But it sounded more like a prayer than an actual belief. Owen smirked, his voice dry as dust. Sure he will. Let me know how that works out. The fallout was brutal. Owen didn't just file for divorce. He torched the narrative. Every friend, every mutual acquaintance, every person who had ever looked at them and seen a happy marriage, they got the full, unfiltered truth. Screenshots, receipts, time-stamped proof of every lie she had ever told. Her parents called her, their voices thick with disappointment. Her coworkers whispered behind her back. The office gossip mill churned out every dirty detail until even the receptionist knew her business. Her perfect little image, loving wife, dedicated career woman, all-around class act, shattered like cheap glass. And Rick? The second the divorce was filed, he ghosted her. No calls, no texts, no tearful declarations of love. Just cold, empty silence. Turns out, Mr. Hotshot wasn't looking for a long-term mess. He was in it for the thrill, not the baggage. Amanda showed up at his place once, pounding on the door, screaming his name. 5 minutes later, she got a text. Lose my number. That was it. One day, Amanda received a call from the bank. The representative's tone was polite but firm as they asked why she hadn't made her loan payment that month. Her stomach dropped. What loan? She asked, already dreading the answer. That's when the truth hit her. Rick hadn't just used her credit cards. He had convinced her to take out loans in her name, swearing he'd handle the payments. He'd made it sound so easy, so harmless. Just a short-term thing, he had said. I'll take care of it. But now, Rick was gone. And so was his promise. Not a single payment had been made. The debt was hers alone. Amanda's hands trembled as she gripped the phone, the weight of her choices crashing down all at once. In the end, Amanda wasn't just alone. She was drowning in debt. Rick had vanished without a trace, leaving her to deal with the mess he had so easily walked away from. The bank wanted their money, the collectors wouldn't stop calling, and her once carefree life had turned into a financial nightmare. Every bill, every overdue notice, every declined transaction was a bitter reminder of how spectacularly she had lost. She had traded a stable marriage for a fleeting fantasy. And now? Now, she had nothing. No husband. No lover. No safety net. Just a pile of unpaid bills and a future that looked bleaker by the day. She had burned her entire life to the ground for a guy who wouldn't even give her a pity coffee. Weeks later, Owen sat in his new apartment. Sparse. Quiet. The joint accounts? Gone. The house? In escrow. Amanda's name? Scrubbed from everything that mattered. She had tried to fight, of course. Hired some sleazy lawyer who folded the second Owen's evidence hit the table. She walked away with a pittance. Enough for a cheap rental and a brutal reality check. No alimony. No sympathy. The last time Owen saw her, she was shoving boxes into a beat-up sedan, her once flawless hair a tangled mess, her eyes hollow and sunken. She glared at him from across the street. Owen, standing on the porch of what used to be their home, lifted his coffee mug and a mock toast. To freedom, he called out, voice dripping with sarcasm. Amanda flipped him off. The tires screeched as she tore out of the driveway, disappearing into the distance. Owen just took another slow sip of coffee, leaning back against the railing. He'd lost a wife, sure. But he'd gained something better. The satisfaction of watching her crash and burn on her own terms. She had thought she could play him, manipulate him, twist him into whatever version of a husband she needed while she chased her fantasy. But in the end, she'd only played herself. Straight into the wreckage of a life she had set on fire.